to start from the web? Yep. Yeah. Okay. I'm Councillor Peter Bolton, and I'm chairing this meeting, and Tony Jarvis is my vice chairman. I would like to remind everybody present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet or filmed and will be capable of repeated viewing or another use by third parties. If you are seated in the lower public seating area, then it is likely that the recording cameras will capture your image, and this will result in the possibility that your image will become part of the broadcast. This may infringe your human and data protection rights, and if you wish to avoid this, then you should move to the upper public gallery. And I also ask members to activate their microphones before speaking, and then also turn them off when they've finished speaking. My speaker will be on throughout the meeting. Thank you. Apologies for absence, item 2.
There are no apologies for absence.
Do I have to declare that they're not there? No.
The Councillor Matthews and I will be recorded as absent.
Yes.
Councillor Heaps on Zoom. The meeting's quorate.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Declarations of interest. Any members got a declaration of interest? Thank you. Item 4, the minutes. Are there any comments before we confirm these minutes held on the 27th of June?
Yeah, for me.
Yes. Councillor Heath.
I seem to remember we had a discussion about the planning department, which doesn't seem to be anywhere in the minutes. I was urging some kind of audit of their performance, and then Councillor Phillips intervened to say, well, various things, including that there was a process for vexatious complainants to be named as such, and that's going to cause us more problems. So we need to. It's going to cause us more problems because the steps have not been transmitted to the person who has been labelled a vexatious complainant, which he's entitled to get all of this information. So it's something that we need to address more fully, especially in the light of that the planning officers made a prosecution statement and included 2 falsehoods that I know of in that statement. Now, the legal people say that that doesn't actually affect the outcome, and it may not. It may not be germane at all, but the fact is a report was made by the planning department and the legal department which contained falsehoods, and this is a terribly bad thing, I think.
Can Laura speak to this, please? Thank you.
With regard to the minutes, at the last meeting, I can review the webcast, but at the last meeting, I felt that it was determined that the best approach for that would be to take it to another committee, and therefore I didn't regard it as relevant to the proceedings of the audit and governance.
I accept that.
You're happy with it, with that?
Yep,
that response?
I accept that reasoning.
Councillor Heath, thank you. And I welcome Councillor Owen. We've just... Yeah, no, that's okay. We're down to 4. Unless you have any comments on the previous meetings, we will agree these. Are we prepared to agree these minutes? Yes, thank you.
Chairman, can you just confirm the declarations of interest for Councillor Owen, please?
Oh yes, sorry. Councillor Owen, have you
I don't know.
No, thank you. Matters arising. We have no matters arising, I believe. Next to item 6, Audit and Governance Committee Work Programme. Andrew, can I ask you to speak to this?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. There was an item due to come to this committee on the work programme, which was the
You're muted.
Just unmute.
No, thank you, yes. And
thank you, Andrew. Just to, I suppose, pick up from where Andrew was commenting. So we've been working closely with the finance team to progress the FY21 audit to get that to completion. We're not far off, but there are a few queries across a few areas that are spread across a few areas, and so between us, we're trying to sort of tie those up over the coming weeks, and so we have got a position where there's a draft ISA 260 report with the authority and with the team there, and so we're looking to bring the FY21 audit to conclusion, and also just to ensure that we're setting up the process for the FY22 audit. So that will get going alongside as we're finalising the last bits of the 2021 audit, and as Andrew mentioned, that we're working with the team just to get this back into the sort of more usual timescales, and so we can come back to the audit committee at the end of November. We've also progressed the work around value for money, which there's an ability to look at the 2 years, and so that's hopefully, again, will stand us in good stead in working with the team and bringing that back also. As Andrew mentioned, there isn't anything significant in terms of findings to date that I need to highlight to you. So at this point, I did just want to come and provide that sort of brief verbal update as we finalise and formalise things to bring back in a report format soon.
Can I ask for any comments from members of the committee? Yes, Tony.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate that this council is not different than a number of others across the country, but this is going to be very difficult for members to receive complex reports that are 2 years out of date, and then within another month or two, perhaps another potentially complex report, which is then only 1 year out of date, and then a few months later, if you're on time, we'll actually get accounts to us which are actually on time, which will be a few months after, 6 months after the end of the current year. So that's all going to be very difficult here, and I think the sooner you can get some information completed and finalised into the council, the easier it will make it for the council to look at it and consider it. Thank you, Chairman.
Any response to that comment, which I would back, and I'm sure my fellow councillors would impress the importance. I know we're not the only council that you represent, but to us it's important. And we would like
Chair, absolutely. And certainly we're all working together to kind of get past the challenges that have been there over the last 12, 18 months and get things back into the more routine reporting cycle.
Thank you. Councillor Heap, did you? No, I saw the. Yeah, no. That's
Tony made the point.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So if we can now move on to item 7, the risk management. Andrew, if you would like to speak to this, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a standing item on the agenda of the Audit Committee, and it's a consideration of the major risks facing the Council at this moment in time. So there is an internal officer process and we meet regularly to look at all the risks that we consider are council-wide or strategic risks, really. The largest risks facing the Council at a given point in time. And we review those to see what the risks are and what actions we're taking to try and mitigate those risks on behalf of the Council. The officer group last met at the end of August, and at that point in time we discussed a number of new emerging risks, I think, that are facing the Council and probably the wider community and country as a whole anyway. Things we discussed at that moment in time were the energy costs or higher energy costs, the impact of the current economic crisis, for want of a better word, on homelessness and what impact it might have on that, demand for new housing assistance. We looked at health and safety. We looked upon kind of the wider economic landscape and the pressures facing the Council's budgets and everybody else's in terms of our ability to progress some of our corporate plan desires. And we also looked at the potential rent cap that the government's discussing introducing at this moment in time, which might limit the amount of income that can be generated by the housing revenue account, which will have a significant impact upon how much the housing revenue account can do in terms of new house building and housing repairs. The table within the covering report summarises the main risks and their risk rating. The risk rating measure is attached as an appendix, so that tells you how we categorise each risk. The highest risk facing the Council at this moment in time, as deemed by the officer group, were probably the adoption of the local plan, which has been outstanding as one of the highest risks for a long period of time now. And financial resilience, which we elevated to risk B1 status at this last meeting, and it's still at that level at the moment, which is almost as high as it can go, really, if I'm honest with you, and probably is a fair reflection of the risks facing the Council at this moment in time. Everything else has stayed much the same, although we have to recognise, of course, that the current economic issues facing the country is having an impact upon almost everything one way or the other. We did add a new risk as well, which was waste management, which is basically a general risk for the problems that we're currently experiencing with the waste collection contract at this moment in time, and embraces all of the issues around the cost of the waste contract, but also the service that's being delivered to our residents, and reflects the fact that there's quite a high reputational risk involved in the current problems that we're seeing in terms of collecting all the waste at this moment in time. I think that's probably all I wanted to say. Thank you, Chairman. Happy to take any questions that the members of the committee might have.
Thank you. By Tony. Yes.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to draw the committee's attention to the fact that CIPFA, that's the Chartered Institute of Public Finance Accountancy, which is the main body, accountancy body for local government, are warning councils about potentially poor risk management of commercial activities. This is not aimed at anyone in particular, it's a general point of the national external auditors, they're saying that council should be urged to apply effective risk management to their subsidiary companies and any other commercial activities to safeguard against financial risks. Now, that's not to say that Epping Forest hasn't done anything, but it's just to bring that notification to this committee's attention. Thank you, Chairman.
Andrew.
If I may, Chair, I think it's a point well made, really. I think that commercial risk of councils taking commercial investments has been in the media for getting on for 2 years or so now, really, and has driven a lot of the government's recent policy changes in relation to councils' ability to borrow for certain activities. I think we've seen a stream of negative press reports about where councils' activities, trading activities, commercial activities haven't gone well. That's probably an understatement, actually. We've seen some in recent months around Thurrock, Croydon, Nottingham. So there's been a stream of commercial investments on the part of councils that haven't gone very well, if I'm honest with you. And we're being under increasing pressure to make sure that our governance arrangements are robust and that we carefully consider any proposals coming forward from those activities with our eye on the risks that are inherent in that. Qualis's own business plan, 1-year update, has just gone to overview and scrutiny, and it will go to Cabinet, I think, on the 10th of October as well. Within that report is quite a lengthy section about the risks that are inherent in the activities that Qualis are taking and how the council is seeking assurance on mitigation of those risks as well. But I think it's something that the committee and the council all need to be cognizant of when they're considering items such as the Qualis business plan or any other commercial activity that the council's taking at this moment in time. Thank you.
Councillor Heap, you wish to speak.
Yes, thank you. I was just going through it all. There are a few things that are quite alarming, I think, and maybe the housing one on page 18, A1 to B1. 953 homes per year, so 2.6 a day. Is this at all likely? I don't think so. Going through it, universal credit has ended. Has it ended, or is it just reduced somewhat? Securing Qualis income. Have they actually returned any money yet? Would be an interesting question. There's a mention of trickle-down benefits. I'm not sure that's a thing at all. But the one that really stuck out was the consequences of services disrupted, loss of service, and then there's a reputational risk. Well, that's happening because the collection of rubbish at the moment is absolutely appalling, and lots of people are complaining bitterly about it, and there seems to be no end to it. And bearing in mind that the residents have a contract with the council, whether it's picked up by BIFA or not doesn't really matter. We as residents have a deal with the council, and that's what people are saying. If you can't get BIFA to pick it up, we need to sort it out in a different way.
Thank you. Talking about waste, certainly on the ground, the residents have been revolting, as it were. There are some legitimate reasons why there have been difficulty. The council is going out to tender in the not too distant future, and this will be borne in mind. But Andrew, if you'd like to address Councillor Heap's queries.
I must apologise, I didn't catch your first query, Councillor Heap. The sound quality is not great in the council chamber, if I'm honest with you. But the ones that I did catch in terms of is Qualis generating any income for the council, yes, it's actually paying us over £2 million a year currently, which is a considerable of considerable importance in the council's balancing its own budget. That comes in the form of interest on loans to Qualis, and that's a net margin really to the council. No dividends as yet, but I don't think we would have expected that to have been the case this early in the business plan model. And I would say, and the business plan report considered by strong overview and scrutiny and cabinet labours on the points of the challenges that the current economic pressures facing the whole economy impact upon the council and Qualis in much the same way, and that's going to make achieving the business plan assumptions. Harder in the short term, I think, but that's the same with everybody else in terms of the challenges on their own financial models. So yes, Qualis is generating money for the council, and but I'd urge you to look at the business plan report be reported to other committees for more information about how the current economic conditions are impacting upon their business plan assumptions. Waste management, I think we're all acutely aware of the impact of the underperformance on the waste collection contract is having on our residents, and the amount of dissatisfaction there is amongst, I'm not sure necessarily everybody, but a large proportion of our resident base really with the current collection contract. I know Cabinet has taken the issue very seriously and met with the directors of BIFA recently to discuss the underperformance issues and what actions could be taken. From this perspective, what we've done is flagged it as a risk, which is probably right and proper, I would argue, given the attention that's being focused on that. And we are going into a new waste contract negotiation at the moment as well, and the current performance issues will weigh large, I suspect, in that contract renegotiation discussions.
Well, there was one, the first...
Well, that's not really a question for Andrew, to be fair.
Oh, right.
Is it at all likely that 2.6 houses per day, every day, including Christmas, are going to be built between now and the end of the local plan? It's not. So we really should address this problem, because there's no way that can be done.
So, again, I didn't quite catch all of that, but it was a local plan question, I think, and are we going to get it over the line by the dates set out in the report? We're still, the inspector's still giving us an indication that it's likely to be approved by the latter half of the year. I think it'll be a challenge. I suspect it may well be just after Christmas, but that's still in the hands of the inspector, if I'm honest with you, and it depends upon the inspector's conclusions about the latest consultation on modifications and the responses we get back. So it's not entirely within our gift, I'm afraid, but that's when we currently expect to see it adopted.
I believe we're on our third inspector, is it? Oh, right. But that has led to delays which have proved very difficult. So keep we can't keep pressure up on them, but they're meant to be. Thank you. Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, two questions, if I may. On the bin situation, it talks about the... oh, no, it's the wrong one, sorry. Sorry, I'm on my phone. Contract defaults and issuing contract defaults. Can you just talk me through what we can actually do to BIFA in terms of contract defaults and what it might mean, is the first question. And the second question is around the interest rates. It's not in this report, but obviously big moves in interest rates this week in the markets. Are you aware of anything that might have happened this week or could happen in the next few weeks with regards to interest rates and the council?
Sorry, Chair. In terms of the waste defaults, yes, we do issue default notices to the contractor, which are financial penalties basically for underperformance or non-performance. I mean, the service specifications are set out within the contract, and if the contractor doesn't deal with those and doesn't remedy them within the conditions laid out within the contract, then we issue a financial penalty to the contractor, and we have done so. Based on the basis that many of our contractors' issues are related to finances and current costs and so on, it's probably not helping the contract overall, but I think it's important that we demonstrate our dissatisfaction with current levels of performance on behalf of our residents, and that's the best way to do that is probably through penalties issued to our contractor, so we are doing that. I would say, and I meant to say, sorry, that the issue of performance on that contract is coming to stronger place at its next meeting, I think. So I think, for any member that's particularly interested in that subject matter might wish to attend that meeting to understand and hear firsthand some of the challenges and also some of the actions that are being taken to try and resolve it. On interest rates, therein lies a question that's occupying a lot of my thinking time at the moment, and I wish I knew what interest rates we're going to do over the short, medium and long term, if I'm honest with you. It is alarming that interest rates, after being so stable for so long, are suddenly increasing quite rapidly at this moment in time. And you're all watching the news, and there's a tension between the government and the bank at the moment in terms of their different views about economic policy. It's being played out in the bank using its means of raising interest rates to try and control inflation, and the government, in its own way, trying to ease, or create more spending power in the economy by lowering taxes, and the two seem to me to be in opposition, if I'm honest with you. It's for better minds or greater minds than mine to resolve that one, but we are seeing real terms pressure as a result of higher interest rates in the short term. At this moment in time, all we can do is keep appraised of the latest forecasts that are coming out of the city in terms of how they think that's likely to play out. Currently, the forecast is for interest rates to peak, not wildly higher. This is sort of medium to longer term interest rates, I would say, in the next 8 to 12 months, and then gradually come back down again. But I wouldn't bet my mortgage on that one, if I was honest with you, at this moment in time. So a very difficult and challenging situation, and one that will feature heavily in the development of the budget for next year as well. You'll see it reported, I think, through the budget development process in terms of current assumptions and ability to challenge our assumptions in that space.
Okay. And back to...
And could you just remind me, do we have any floating debt for the council, is kind of where I was getting at, and also in terms of like pension liabilities or anything like this, big movement in maybe pension liabilities that might have happened?
Yes.
The majority of our debt is fixed rate, so we don't have any variable rates. And with the last variable rate loan we had actually matured back in March, so we don't have any variable rate. We do have some short-term fixed rates, so that has to be replaced regularly, if you like, albeit at fixed rates. It's still actually coming in at pretty good rates, so we're okay at the moment, but if only I had a crystal ball. We're speaking with Arlene Close next week to revisit our strategy in the light of what's happened. As of Monday this week, they were still confident that we were doing the right thing, but they did say that we need to meet next week to discuss and review the position. So it might change. We might carry on as we are for a bit. I don't know is the answer until ask me again in a week's time and I'll have a bit better idea. But difficult times.
Thank you. Referring back to Councillor Heap's comment about Qualis, are the loans to them on a fixed interest rate?
Yeah, the loans to Qualis are on fixed terms, yes.
Shame. Okay, thank you. Any other questions to that? Okay, thanks. If we can move on to agenda number 8, the internal audit progress report, which is going to be presented by Sue.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Sue Lindsley, the lead auditor at Epping, and I'd just like to take you through this report to update you on the work of internal audit and the corporate fraud team. This report is for noting only, and I'll take questions at the end. The status of the 2022-2023 audit plan is shown in Appendix 1 and is progressing well. You'll see that 3 audits have been added to the audit plan as requested by management, and all of these have been started. Although no final reports have been issued, there are 3 audits which are substantially complete and are awaiting input from management to ensure there is buy-in with the recommendations and that the timescales are appropriate. All audit recommendations are added to a tracker and monitored to ensure they are implemented. The current overdue tracker contains 8 items, but I think it's worth noting that none of these are high priority. As well as audits, the team undertakes a wide variety of other work to provide assurances and improve governance processes across the council. For example, sitting on business groups, oversight of projects and giving advice. I'd particularly like to mention that a lot of work has been done on improving the risk management processes and the information governance arrangements across the council. And finally, paragraphs 7 to 9 summarise the work of the corporate fraud team. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Tony.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, thank you for the report. I made the mistake of looking back on the previous report about 3 months ago and then looked at the appendix, the overdue items. And there's a remarkable similarity between the two reports in terms of the ones that were overdue 3 months ago are still overdue now. Now, on a couple of them, there has been description of serious work that's gone into sorting them out. But on the other hand, the others seem just to be lingering, and there seem to be some very important issues that have been raised to be resolved by management. So I'm not, this is not a complaint against Audit, because it's for the managers to sort out these issues. Just a bit alarmed, and I'm just sort of hoping that next time we meet, this list of overdue items will probably be 0, perhaps. Thank you.
Yes, Sue. Thank you.
Just like to say I welcome that your input on the tracker. We do our best to try and make sure, first of all, the recommendations can be achieved and within the agreed timescales. And Sue does go around and talk to the recommendation holders and find out where they are, and then we would put more pressure on them if we think they aren't doing enough. As another backup, this does go regularly to the senior management team, and they crawl all over it as well. But it'd be good to show that Audit Committee are taking this seriously as well, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tony. Any other issues? Thank you. So we will keep an eye on that at our next meeting. Thank you. Now we move on to item number 9, Treasury Management Outturn Report. Chris Hargrove, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, and good evening, members. Item 9 then, the Treasury Management Outturn Report for 21-22. First, I wish to apologise to members for the relatively late arrival of this report to the committee. We were just a couple of numbers short of presenting this report to the meeting on the 27th of June, and this is the first available meeting after that date. We're nevertheless significantly ahead of where we have been in recent years, so timeliness does continue to improve. The report on pages 57 to 70 of your agenda this evening presents the outcome of the adopted Treasury Management Strategy for 21-22. Turning to the highlights then, very briefly, borrowing is summarised on table 3 on page 63. The year-end borrowing position as at the 31st of March 2022 increased slightly to 269 million compared to 261.7 million at the same stage last year. A total of 54 million of that borrowing relates to short-term borrowing from local authorities, with the remainder, 215 million, representing long-term borrowing owed exclusively to the Public Works Loans Board. Investments then summarised on table 4 on page 64. The year-end investment position as at 31st of March increased to 18.7 million compared to 10.5 million at the same stage last year. Most investments, 17 million in fact, were held in money market funds, with the remainder 1.7 million held in the council's main bank account with NatWest. Non-treasury investments then, table 5, page 65. The performance of the council's commercial property investments is also presented. It shows a closing balance sheet value of 162 million compared to a corresponding value of 147.3 million at the same stage in 2021. Overall net income from the commercial property portfolio in the year was 7.5 million, which is up from 6.8 million achieved in 2021, and that reflects additional income generated from new and renegotiated tenancies at North Weald Airfield. And finally, turning to compliance on pages 66 to 69, the prudential and treasury management indicators were generally met in accordance with the adopted strategy. However, there were some minor, very short-lived technical breaches of limits in the year driven by exceptional cash flows, including COVID funding adjustments dictated by central government and the redemption of a large HRA loan of 32.8 million in March 2022. However, the council has since opened a government debt management account deposit facility, which has increased flexibility in a risk-free way and in accordance with the strategy, and that's proving very successful. It's also worth mentioning that the corporate finance function has recently become fully resourced after a lengthy period of relying on interim staff. This is already bearing fruit in terms of strengthening treasury management capacity and all-round agility in managing the council's borrowing and investments. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions from members of the committee? No, thank you very much. Any other business?
Other business.
Choose the public and press.
Well, hang on, there is.
Sorry, yes.
Referring back to what I was saying at the beginning about the performance of the planning department in securing a prosecution against someone based on false evidence or falsehoods presented in that thing. It really does need to be addressed. I'm not sure what the correct forum is, but it looks like this one is. I take the point that Laura made that it wasn't worth including last time in the minutes. That makes absolute sense. But where is the right forum? Because it's not performing very well. If it can actually introduce dated falsehoods into a prosecution case. They actually said this email was sent on this day, and then they've admitted 2 years later it didn't exist. 2 emails have now been admitted that they never went to the man currently being labelled as a vexatious complainant. It's really not very good.
Thank you, Andrew.
I think if it's, Chair, I think if it's an issue about the performance of that team, then probably the correct place would be the stronger place. I think select committee to look into the performance of that area or function. If there's a particular allegation, I suppose, or then that needs to be investigated in its own right. But I think that it has been investigated, if I'm honest. My understanding is, and I'm not particularly close to it, but I thought it had been investigated anyway.
No, it hasn't. Some words have been said, but it's not actually been investigated because somebody wrote a report and claimed that certain things were in it that weren't in it. Couldn't have been in it because the emails themselves didn't exist. And those are the only 2 falsehoods I know about, but I believe there were many more. So no, it has not been investigated. And then there's a further problem with a meeting held by senior planning officers, the monitoring officer, the deputy monitoring officer, and one of the planners, with Conservative councillors about a live application by a Conservative parish councillor. And Councillor Bedford said in the chamber that there'd been an investigation. There hasn't been an investigation. And I have that in 2 emails from 2 different people at EFDC. So no, it hasn't been investigated, and it does need to be.
I believe you've had communication with the council's legal officer, monitoring officer in relation to that particular.
Yes, but how could she investigate a meeting that she was at?
So I think rather than, perhaps we could have a separate conversation about this, Councillor Heap. But I'm not really sure it's a matter for audit and governance in particular, in relation to a particular issue or a particular case, rather.
Happy to do that.
Yeah, yes, if you're happy with that, it obviously needs to be more openly discussed, and I welcome Andrew's input, and we'll wait to hear from Councillor Heap whether he feels that things have moved forward, because this is obviously a major issue for the image of the council as well as the integrity of the system. Are you happy with how things are moving? Thank you. Councillor Owen.
Sorry, it was on the last item actually. I did have a question. I forgot. I was only just seeing it now. IFRS 16, I noticed we've delayed it by 2 years and we said it's not going to have a material impact. Do we know the size of the leases that we have that need to be capitalised? And my other question was, the leases that we have with Qualis, do we need to capitalise them on our balance sheet as the council if it's like inter-group lending effectively?
Chris, are you able to take that?
Sorry, I'm going to be a bit vague on this one. We don't really have hardly any leases that are going to end up on our balance sheet as a result. There's not a big issue for the council. The minutiae of how it will work, I can't honestly give you the answer to that. That's in terms of compliance. It's been deferred for a couple of years, as I say, until we sort of get there and do the work. I won't be in a position to give you precise details. All I can say is that it's not a big issue for this council at all. So.
Thank you. Right. Excuse and press and public, which we don't have. So I'd like to call this meeting to a close at 7:43. Thank you. I wasn't sure whether my watch was correct. Thank you, gentlemen and ladies, for your input. Thank you.